We are live with Hannah Morgan, the OG of career advisory. Hannah Morgan she's like the person who's been doing this like forever and is smart and wonderful. Check out careersherpa.net. And today we're going to talk a lot about how people could use AI for their careers. And I'd like to hand it off to you, Hannah.
Yeah,
What do you think about ChatGPT and AI for the job seeker?
I'm really happy that so many good things have come out of the pandemic, right? And like all of the work from home stuff, the just still the pay transparency, and now we've got something else that's really helping level the playing field for job seekers, especially those people that haven't had to do this in a while and don't know what they're supposed to be doing and don't know what does a good resume look like today? How do I write a cover letter? Do I write a cover letter? Do I need to follow up after? So all of those questions.
Just hearing that, I'm like, oh my God, my head is spaced. Seriously, I'm hearing that. I'm like, thinking of his job seeker, like, oh my God, I got to do all this.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, like,
Yeah.
I think that they don't really know what job search entails until you're thrown into it. And then it's like overwhelming. And I'm not going to suggest that ChatGPT is going to tell you how to do it, though it could. I think that all of those questions that you have about job search, like what does a good cover letter or what does a good cover letter look like? You could go Google what does a good cover letter look like? And what you'll end up doing is going through all kinds of different templates that are online and they all want you to pay or subscribe to download. And it just becomes a wiggly mess. So I feel sorry for people that do try and use the internet for that because it's overwhelming. But instead, they could go to ChatGPT, for example, and type in the correct prompt, and we'll talk more about that, and get a cover letter generated that is better than a template. It doesn't mean that it's the finished product, but it does start the job seeker along the way. The other thing that ChatGPT is really good for is research. So if you in your last job were, I don't know, a financial analyst, right? And you say, you know what, I want out of being a financial analyst because the work is grueling. I really want more human interaction, whatever it is, right? So you can type into ChatGPT a prompt that says, what are alternative job titles that somebody with a background in as a financial analyst could go do? And it's going to come up with some ideas for you. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to pursue those and those are the only ideas, but it helps in the idea generating process, which is where so many job seekers get stuck.
So let's start out for the first step. So let's say, I guess this would be really helpful for the people watching it here or when we do replays, the do-it-yourselfers, somebody who, may not have the resources to go to a career advisor, or maybe they just do it. They want to do it themselves. And, I respect that. To start with, what would you recommend? Do they do the resume first? Do you do a LinkedIn profile? What's the first thing they could do?
That's, there's so many different schools of thought on that.
Okay.
My belief is identifying your target, what you want to do next is where you have to start. Because you can't write a resume until you know where you want to go, because the resume needs to speak to this is how I'm positioning myself for this kind of a career option. So assessing and evaluating what you're good at doing and what you like to do is really what comes first. You may already have identified that you really want to work in the nonprofit world. Mm-hmm. Great, that's awesome. So you could say, what kind of career options are available for somebody with a financial analyst background in the nonprofit world? Right. So that would be a great place to start. So if you can do that research and identify job titles or industry or types of companies that you want to get started with, then you can begin thinking about, okay, how does my past experience line up with what I want to do? And what do I need to make that happen? And that's where, again, more research. You might want to talk to some people who are actually in the nonprofit world holding some of those job titles so that you can gain firsthand knowledge. Or you could ask, ChatGPT, or you can look at some LinkedIn data that says, people who have a background on this will do, have a background in financial analysts, do these kinds of jobs in nonprofit. So once you have gotten sort of that idea of this is what I want to do next, and I don't ever want to hear people say this is what I want to be when I grow up, because we're going to be switching careers so many times that if we look at a 5-year chunk, that's good. That's like the longest I think we can ever really plan in today's really topsy-turvy world. Identify what you want to do, and then you can write your resume. And it's resume or LinkedIn profile. Honestly, I think if you're going to do a major rewrite, you're better off doing that on paper, offline first, get that nailed down, and then transfer that over to the LinkedIn profile. But that's going to mean that time is of the essence, because every day that your LinkedIn profile is misaligned or not updated, you're missing out on opportunities that recruiters might be searching for somebody just like you.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you find that when you get new clients, that they don't really know what they want to do next, that they're feeling lost, or do they come to you and they really know what they're doing and they just want you to help out, maybe do a resume, do it this? What do you see?
I think it's a mix. I think, and this is where I think people who are employed and looking know what they want to do. People who have been laid off and are unemployed and looking, usually, and again, generalizations, but those are the ones that usually say, I think I want to do what I want to do next, but I don't know for sure. Or I want to do something different and I have no idea what that is.
Why do you think, is that because maybe they feel burnt, that they were downsized and now they're like, you know what, maybe like tech sector, about 200,000 people were laid off in 2023. So maybe like, you know what, I keep seeing more layoffs. Let me do something else. I don't know what, but let me just go to a different sector.
I think being laid off hurts your ego and self-esteem a lot. And it makes you sort of think, shoot, was I even meant to do this? And we have to realize that it's not so seldom, like very rarely is a layoff ever performance-based, right? It doesn't mean that you weren't right for the job. And it doesn't mean that if you go into another company, there's going to be another layoff, right? That we're all subject to layoff at any time. There's no such thing as a stable job. I used to talk to college graduates that were looking for a job and they would say, I just want a stable job. I'm like, good luck with that.
Not anymore, right? It's not like our parents' generation where you stay there for 20, 30 years, you get your gold watch, a hearty handshake, maybe a pension. No more. It's over.
Well, maybe the only thing that I can think of is like working for a local government, right?
Yeah. And you know what? That's why there's so many employees working. If you think about it, the biggest employer in the US is the government, because they get that safety. You have to probably kill somebody to lose your job. And even then you probably won't lose your job, and you get great pensions. So let's say you're starting, right? And you were looking at a person feels a little disgruntled. They lost their job. They're in between jobs. Would it also make sense to go to AI? And there are a lot out there. You could take a look, ChatGPT, but there, Google Bard, there's Proximity, but I'm butchering it and I use it every day and I'm embarrassed. I don't know the exact name of it, something like that. Christine, do you remember the one that I use? Perplexity, which is pretty cool. And
then
Microsoft has their thing. So there's a lot of venues. Would you suggest, okay, I'm looking for a new job. I was in between jobs. And before I go and interview somewhere, to use AI to give prompts about the finances of the company? Have there been past layoffs? Are there any plans for layoffs? What's up with the management team? So this way beforehand, because once bitten, twice shy, you know what I mean? Then you're like, I don't want to go back to another firm. Do you think that's a good strategy also for somebody to start with?
I think it absolutely, the more research we can do before we go into an interview or even applying for a job, the better we'll be. And I don't think that ChatGPT is going to be the best tool for that. It would have to be a real-time tool like a Google Bard, because ChatGPT is only going up to 2021, right? It's not real time. So using a Google Bard, which is real time, would be a great way to research a company, I'm conducting research on XYZ company. Please give me a summary of their their financial statements and how they, if there've been whatever, what their employment rate has been, or their layoffs,
Yeah,
or
the
the higher.
turnover, layoffs, downsizings,
But
like
even
any kind of data.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
even if you go to the company
Yeah.
website, the company page on LinkedIn, it will show you some data about the company and the tenure of people in the company and things like that. So,
What do you think about AI for getting a sense of, the corporate culture, DEI, and other things that might be important to you when you look for a job?
I, I still don't think there is enough good language around
Really?
company culture to evaluate that through any means other than a human to human conversation. So if you know that you want a company that has a very flexible PTO policy,
Mhm.
you might be able to ask Google Bard, what is the vacation or the PTO policy at XYZ? Or you could say, what companies have the most flexible PTO
Mhm.
policies? You could do that. But if you don't have if you're just saying, I want to work for a company that has a great culture, that's different to
Yeah.
different people. So you'd have to get specific about what you're looking for. But Bard would be a good tool for
Yeah.
that.
Do you think do you think AI would be a great tool for, like, do you have any questions for me, or what questions I should ask, kind of thing, so you're
Oh,
prepared?
absolutely. I'm interviewing for this job at this company. What questions should I be prepared to answer?
Now, how would they go about doing it? Like, what would you suggest to start to, because I've always find people, like, they get so nervous about at the end of the interview when they say, "Hey, do you have any questions for me?" Like, oh my gosh, they can't even focus on the interview because they're so worried about answering those questions at the
I know.
end.
I know.
So is there a way, do you think, that people could use AI to just
To
have that
generate
they're
the
ready?
question. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. What are good questions to ask at the end of an interview with the hiring manager or the recruiter? And I think that one of the things that you might agree to is that the questions that you're asked of a recruiter are different sometimes than the questions you'd be asked by a hiring manager, and different being asked by maybe the head of the department or the CEO, whoever. So they all ask different types of questions because the purpose of their interview is a little bit different. So it's important for us as job seekers creating a prompt to figure out what questions we're going to be asked, is to indicate who we're interviewing with, what level we're interviewing at.
That's such a smart thing you brought up, because I could tell you from firsthand experience. I'm so glad you said this. And so we'll go on a little tangent from AI for a second.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, because when people interview, they think they could just say the exact same thing to the HR person, to the hiring manager, to a subordinate, to a peer, to, and lately it's decision by consensus when they hire. So you're going to probably meet 6, 7, 8 people if you're a mid to senior level person. So that you want to be able to kind of switch it up a little bit for each kind of person, knowing who your audience is, right? Is that a
Absolutely. The concerns of somebody in a recruiter or HR screening you for the job are
right?
very different than the person that you're going to be reporting to. So HR and recruiters care about, okay, does the person have the skill sets, the
Yeah.
qualifications for the job? That's really their objective, right? Are they going to be a good fit in this company? But the hiring manager is like, okay, how well do they know these skills?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to solve some of the problems that I have in my department? Are they going to be able to get along with Jimmy, who's really a tough person to
Yeah. Yeah.
work
Yeah.
with, right? So the hiring manager is looking at a lot of different things. So absolutely understanding your audience is the most important thing that we can do. So
So
it's almost like you get better at interviewing the more you do it. When you're first doing it, you're like, I just need to get through this interview, right? But by the time you've done it 5 or 6 times, you're like, oh, light bulbs go off. I understand. I need to really be connecting with this individual and speaking to their specific needs, not just the general needs.
so it sounds like what you're saying, if, like, someone in the audience who's watching now or watching the replays, is that, all right, now that I know I can't, I shouldn't just say the same thing. I have to tailor it, so that maybe you would have a script, you'd write a script for, hey, what should I say to the HR person? What should I what questions or what should I say to that senior executive? What should I say to a peer? What should I say to an underling? And this way you could kind of have all that. And then you just insert it. It'd be general, but then you can kind of insert the company, the person, and then make it really tailored, right?
And I don't want to overcomplicate things because
Yeah.
people are already so stressed about interviewing,
Yeah.
but you're sort of right. It doesn't mean that you're going to tell a totally different, give a totally different example to HR and the hiring manager. You just may put greater emphasis on
Yes.
when you're talking to the hiring manager. I did a lot of collaboration with my team, and I, blah, blah, blah. You might go into depth in things that that they're more concerned about versus HR. They just want the qualifications.
Yeah. It's so funny because you mentioned about how they are different. With recruiter, it's totally different because they'll say, Jack, all right, what's the deal? Like they wouldn't talk the same way to me, to like someone at the company as they would do to me. Like, dude, what's the real Jack? What's the real deal? What's going on? What are they going to pay? You gave a salary range that's like $50 to $5 million. What the F? What's going on? What are you going to really pay? Come on, tell me what's happening. So you're right. So like, you're not going to have that conversation with the corporate executive. No, it's not,
No.
it's not going to go like that. It's going to be.
But
more
wouldn't it
polished.
almost be, it would almost be, let's wave the magic wand.
Yeah.
Why do we have to be like this on this first date, best behavior kind of thing? Like, why can't we just really,
God.
wouldn't that be nice? Like,
Oh my God. It would be so great. We always talk about being your authentic self, bring your
Yeah.
genuine self to work, but yet like, you don't do it because you're afraid to do it. Because
Yeah, right.
You don't know what's going to happen. But how great would it be if you could just have like a real conversation, like, wait, and you've seen these salary ranges. It'd be like,
Crazy.
100,000 to 5. It's like, come on, we're calling BS on that. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
And would it be great? You could just call them on it and say, listen, I'm not blaming you, Mr. or Mrs., person at the company. You didn't make up the rules, but come on,
Yeah. It's crazy.
because then what happens is this, then it's misleading because a lot of time what I see, people will anchor to the higher number because
Of
they'll
course they
just
will.
presume, oh, I'm awesome. And so I should get the 500,000. Meanwhile, they're anchoring to the, the lowest
The
one.
100,000, right? Yeah.
So then you go through the whole interview process. You're thinking 5, they're thinking 100, and you went to 6, 7 interviews and you get an offer for 102. And then
Everybody,
the person's like, what's
Yeah.
going on here?
yeah. I will say, right, for every bad recruiter out
Yeah.
there are 100 good ones,
Oh,
right?
sure.
So,
I don't know, but
and the good ones really do try to be more transparent and gain that sort of agreement up
Yeah.
front. But it's a messy, dirty process, and it's just we can't change it. Like I can't change it. You can't change. You can change how you're communicating, but I
Exactly.
can't change it. The best I can do is understand it and deal with it in the best way possible. And I think that's one of the things that we try and do as we're helping job seekers is understand, what? This isn't always the best way for it to work, but we can help make it easier for you. You want to be saying things that are going to bring you forward in the process and not eliminate you, because you don't know what that final salary is going to be, and that you won't know until you get to the very end of the game. So play the long game.
Would you suggest for people for it to use AI to do a cover letter, to do a thank you note,
Yeah.
to maybe send emails, when you're not hearing back, to have like a customized way instead of saying, why are you not getting back to me? But just a polite, nice way to say,
Yes.
hey, what's going on?
Most job seekers that I work with are always saying to me, do you have a template for this? Do you have a template for that?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah, but why don't you just use ChatGPT? Because then it becomes a rough draft, right?
Right.
And you know that ChatGPT is basing its answers off of thousands and millions of pieces of data. Like they're scouring the internet to come up with these things. So rather than me giving you a template that may or may not be the best, right? You're getting one from Google Bard or ChatGPT that is already pulling together some of the best stuff. You still have to edit it. And the problem with ChatGPT, for a lot of people who haven't used it before, is very verbose. It uses 1,000 words instead of 500 to really convey a point. So there are ways you can get it to write shorter. You just have to tell it, keep this under, 50 words or whatever. But absolutely, for cover letter, those are the things that people want help with. How do
Mhm.
I write a good cover letter? How do I write a good thank you note? How do I send a follow-up email when I haven't heard back? ChatGPT.
Because you don't do, like, I find it as a writer, when you have that blank page, that's the worst.
It is.
So sometimes if you just have something on there, it doesn't even have to be that good. It could be, and that's what I think a lot of, just I could say from, my side, is that even if it's robotic and like awkwardly written and, it's so obvious that it's AI doing it, but at least it starts a framework where
Yes.
it gets you going, like, okay, you're not at that blank page, so you have something to look at. And then also, it's the time it takes to research so many things, it takes forever. So this cuts right to the chase. So if you're a
Yeah.
job seeker and you want a cover letter, you could say, hey, write me a prompt for a cover letter for this type of job. And and I relocated. So how do I say that? And you give all the different parameters, and then it makes their life easier.
Yeah. It saves a lot of time and it removes a lot of stress and anxiety that job seekers face. Like there's so much that job seekers are stressing about during the process. Oh, I haven't heard back from the recruiter. I haven't, right. I'm going for my 5th interview. Like there's nerve-wracking stuff. I don't want them to have to stress over, am I saying this the right way in a cover letter? Right? Who needs that?
Speaking of the stress and anxiety, what do you see with your clients? Like, what are the big pain points right now? Are they worried about layoffs? Are they worried about that, your career might be over because of the tough economy? Well, what are you seeing?
A lot of the people that I'm working with are sort of, I don't know the right word, concerned that it is taking so long to get responses. Some of them did start sort of earlier when the market was hotter, and then now they're seeing the slowdown, and they're like, oh, it's slowing down.
Yeah.
Right. Well, before I would have gotten 5 hits on this. Now I'm getting maybe 1. So it's slowing down for them,
Yeah.
and that's a little concerning for them. But I don't. It's not the end of the world, right? They're still getting opportunities. They're still talking to people. It's just going to take maybe a little bit longer, which is always a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. I'm glad you
Hi.
brought it up. I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought it up, because that's a big thing I hear from people all across, whether it's through recruiting, whether it's just people I know, friends, family, people who are going through this. And usually they are embarrassed because they think it's them. They think like, what am I doing wrong? And when I mentioned to them, no, this is a systemic thing. It's definitely slower. It takes longer. There are more bumps. Because my take is this. I'm curious how you feel about it. With higher inflation, the costs are rising, higher interest rates, worries about what's going to happen in the Ukraine-Russia war, add on all the political toxicity, you can keep going. I could understand why these companies drag their feet a little bit. They don't know what's going to happen, so they're just slow walking the whole process, and then they're hoping to find somebody who's like this unicorn, but get them at the cheapest value. And
Right.
so it goes, so that it just goes on and on and on. And this is
Yeah,
yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think the other thing that is
Mhm.
happening and that has forced the employer, so many of the initial interviews are virtual.
Mhm.
So in the olden days, we'd have a phone screen, we'd go in for our in-person
Yeah.
interview, right? We'd be invited back for a second interview where we'd probably meet a couple of people, and then we'd get an offer, right? But now, because it's virtual, you have the phone screen, virtual, 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 virtual. So you've met the whole team virtually, and then so 5 or 6 interviews, not unusual, 8, 9 interviews to get to the point where the company is actually ready to make a decision. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It really is. It's
But I think it's because virtual.
yeah, the emotional roller coaster that people have to go through is just so awful.
It is. And that's why I always recommend that job seekers find somebody that they can talk to. a fellow job seeker is usually the best, and there are job seeking clubs out there and organizations, but create a group of people that you can commiserate with and you can lift each other up. Your family, this is the problem. Like if you're unemployed, your spouse, your partner, your family is just as concerned, if not more, than you are.
Mhm.
So they can't always give you the support that you want them to give because they're terrified too. So finding somebody who's going through this job search process, and the ups and downs and the emotional roller coaster, they know what that's like. They know what you're doing. They understand how hard this is, and they can be a great touch point to help keep you motivated and on keel.
How can someone find a group like that, or do they have to put something together themselves?
It really depends. I know that there are hundreds of these groups around the country, and I think you can Google job clubs. They're usually called job clubs. But if you've been laid off with a bunch of your peers, that's a great built-in job club right there, or to work together, stay in touch base, but make it, if you formulate it and make it more like a project management meeting rather than can we cry in our beer
Yeah.
over this? You'll find it's better. But if there are job clubs out there, oftentimes they're held at libraries, or there's some religious organizations that host them, but they're out there.
What other advice would you give to people who, keep striking out? They're getting, their mental health is being impacted. They're getting anxious. What would you say to them? Just, I know you can't just snap your fingers and they'll feel better. Just, say, all right, snap out of it. But
Yeah. Situational depression is real. And I've seen people who've been unemployed for a very long period of time. This was after 2008, 9, 10, right? That's the Great Recession. And there were people who got into really bad emotional states. So the first step is recognizing that you're not okay. But before you get there, I think one of the things people forget is that volunteering is a really great way to help other people, be active in the community, do something that is meaningful to you, gives you a sense of purpose. Volunteering is a great way to do that. So before you get to the point where you're like over the edge,
right.
start volunteering. And I'm not asking you to, nobody's asking you to volunteer for 100 hours, just 1 hour a week, doing something that's meaningful for you. The other thing that you can do is enroll in some online learning. Because again, if we're investing in ourselves, we tend to feel better and we feel a sense of accomplishment. And there are so many online learning tools and resources about there. Develop some skills around something that you need to learn for your next job. So volunteering and if you don't meditate or do any kind of exercise, I've known a lot of job seekers that decided during their job search that they were going to start walking every morning and as part of their new routine, and gets the endorphins going, makes the body feel good, puts you in a different frame of mind. I think having some sort of schedule is really important to human beings. We thrive, we need that. We had it at work, we're craving that. So put together a schedule for yourself and carve out me time for you to do stuff that's important to you. If you don't get to normally spend time with your family, carve out an hour a day for you to have some special one-on-one time with family members.
I'm glad you said that, because I think for a lot of people, what happens, let's say a person who's been in the workforce 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they're so regimented, of what to do. And part, like, you get suffocated being regimented, but sometimes there's this comfort level because you know what to expect and what to do. And then all of a sudden you're in between jobs and now it's destroyed. So you have no rhythm.
Right.
Like, when do you wake up? I usually would wake up at such and such because I got to get this train, and now it's all out the window. So it just throws you off. And now you're home, you're not in the office, you don't have the camaraderie with your colleagues. So yeah, it just messes with you. So you're right. You gotta kind of rebuild a completely new infrastructure of what to do. Like, what to do in the morning, what to do for lunch, what to do, in terms of workout, take a walk, do yoga, do meditation, Just so this way, you're structured, because it's so easy just to sit on the couch and watch TV and just be
Mm.
woe is me, right?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? There's a point. Like, I think if that's what you need to do one day, then do
Sure,
that
of
one day, right?
course.
But don't get stuck into a week of lying on the couch feeling sorry for yourself eating bonbons.
Because it's so easy to do, right?
Oh,
It's
it
so
is.
easy to
Oh my
slip
gosh.
into that.
When I started my business, which was long ago, I created time blocks for
Hmm.
myself of all of the activities that I knew I had to do on an ongoing basis. So part of that was checking LinkedIn. Part of that was sending outreach inquiries to people that might have business for me. Ugh, right? Nobody likes doing that. Part of that was, going to conferences or networking meetings for job seekers, different things. So I had my calendar full for a week almost, right? These are all the things that I should be doing every day. So when I woke up in the morning, as much as I didn't want to do most of the tasks on my list, they were on my list. They were on my calendar. I had to do them. So that made me feel productive. And I think with that, at the end of the day, we need that.
And what do you call that again? Because I've seen you post that
Yeah,
online
time
a number of times.
blocking.
Time blocking. So that's the official, because
You can
I,
do that for work too. People do it.
it's,
That's the thing. I pulled it from work. At work, we have time blocks, right? The people that, oh, I've got this Monday morning meeting at 9 o'clock. So that goes on your calendar every day, right? And then I've got my meeting, my annual performance review, and then I've got to make phone calls to whatever. So if we're using the same principles we used at work, but with our job search, same diff.
I'm going to do that more, because I kind of do that, but I do it on a ad hoc basis, right? I don't have it like official. So what'll happen, give you just an example. So I might be looking for candidates for a job, and you're it's kind of a low energy kind of thing, because you're going through your resume database, maybe you're going through some portals, you're looking on LinkedIn. So before you know it, it's almost like scrolling through social media, even though it's work.
Yeah.
So it could easily be 2 hours, and then like, oh, 2 hours, I really didn't get anything done.
Right.
Instead of having a time block saying, okay, I'm allocating half an hour to do this. So I'm going to do a deep dive, intensive, no BS. Don't get, like distracted. Boom. And then if I can't find it, okay. Because also, Hannah, I'm curious if you see this too. What happens is that the results are, the more you do it, the less your results are, because you start
Right.
just phasing out, you gloss over,
Right.
you just can't focus anymore. And then you're doing it, but you're not even retaining anything. So it's like, okay, let me get that block, get it done, put it aside. And then also you get a check, you get a victory. So you get that little dopamine hit, right? Like you
Yeah.
feel like, okay, got this done. And then you move on to the next one. So that's kind of what
Yeah,
you mean, right?
absolutely. The Pomodoro method has been around for a long time,
Is
which
that what they
is
call it? What's
Pomodoro method.
okay?
So I think you work in like 15-minute sprints
Yeah.
or maybe it's 30-minute sprints, but the idea is our brain can't stay focused and functioning for long periods of time, right? Before it starts wandering. So if you're doing those 15-minute sprints or 30-minute sprints with a break, you're maximizing the most of your brain power at any one time.
Yeah. All right. Don't laugh at me, but this is
Now I'm laughing.
I hit that wall. Maybe it's because I'm getting a little older. There'll be time where I might say to you, let's say where I caught, Hannah, can we talk about this later? Because I just don't have that like mental processing ability at this point. Like it's maybe 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm like shot. And I'm like, in the past you try to, just
Push through
man,
it.
get pushed through, but then you're not doing a good job, and you're just going to get irritated, and the other person be irritated. I'm like, you know what? Can we just take a time out and we resume it tomorrow when I'm fresh? In
Yeah.
fact, something, I just saw a little clip with Jeff Bezos, and he was saying something as similar as that, like that he'll schedule, he wakes up at a certain time, putters around the house with the kids and whatever. Now, who knows? Maybe he's just saying that so he could get, feel like he's a human being, right? I don't know. But then he'll have a meeting like at, let's say 10, I don't know the exact thing, because by then had some breakfast, he's kind of alert and what have you, so he could hyper focus. And then he would have other times that he knows that, okay, people are in that zone and could be effective. But like later on at 4, he's like, no, we could just do it tomorrow morning at 10, because
Yeah, I'm no
you're
good.
tired, you worry
Yeah.
about the commute home, you're just cranky, you didn't have your coffee yet. So I think there's a lot to it. But the pump, wait, the pump, so people know it, it's the pump
Pomodoro method,
Pomodoro. Okay.
which is really using time slots for any kind of activity that, not time slots, but 15-minute time increments, 30-minute time
Yeah.
increments.
It's interesting because I wrote this piece just recently about how tech people were saying, hey, we work about 4 hours a day. And when people would see that, they had this visceral reaction. Only 4 hours, you're so entitled. Oh, how dare you? You make hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions in 4 hours. But really, what they were saying, and there's a disconnect, it's not that they only work for it. It's like 4 hours in the flow, hyper focused,
Right.
headphones on, blocking everything out. And even by 4 hours, you're shot. You know what I mean? Because you just put everything you have into doing that coding for 4 hours. And it doesn't mean that's it. You go home. It's then you decompress, you chill out, and then you
There's
do
other things to do.
and then you do the other things,
right.
reports and paperwork and everything else like that. Yeah. Which is kind of a variation of what
And
the
I think
Pomodoro.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to know when our peak performance is,
Right.
right? We all are, and different people have different times where they really are
Right.
at their peak performance, and use that. Like those are the times when you should slot those activities that are most challenging for you. For teenagers, it always made me so boggled the mind that the high schoolers start their day at like 7:15. The little kids start at 9. Well, we all know that high schoolers, their circadian clock is different. They don't wake up until 9 o'clock. Their brains don't wake up. Yet little kids are awake at 6 o'clock watching cartoons. So
Yeah.
why we don't flip that? And some schools are starting to do that. So there's enough science around this that we can use that science for our own good. Use your time when you are at your peak energy.
That makes so much sense. So let's kind of wrap this up in terms of for the AI part.
Yeah.
Let's say, so this way we can get people to take home some kind of interesting things.
Action. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, kind of jump, throw some out and then like just see if we're missing anything. So cover letters, right?
Mhm.
Where they could just use AI to just do a cover letter. So you don't have to sit there and figure out like, what do I say? What's the right way? Boom. They could just do the bare basics.
Yep.
And then as you were pointing out, Hannah, it'd be robotic. So you can't just send it the way it is. You got to give some humanity, some emotion, some personality to it, right? Like you can't just, take it, copy, paste and put it on there.
Right.
So then maybe commonly asked questions. What do you think about? I don't think we talked about that. Like maybe like, hey, what are the top, 25 most asked questions and then role play it? Is that something you'd recommend?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Then
Questions that they can ask in the interview.
That's what questions you have for me. So have that already.
Yeah.
And then with virtual, you just have like notepad, like stickies around your computer. So
Right.
so you can have it handy to look at. Researching the company to make sure
Researching
you
the
don't
company.
go into another, researching the people, which sounds creepy, but you got to do what you got to do. Like make sure, like, am I going to work for a psychopath or, a nice person? So
It's just intel. It's
right?
already out there. So,
Right.
So you're creating a dossier on the person that you're going to be meeting with.
And then I like I'm going to try that myself. I'm going to try to write some email stuff because like emails are easy, but at the same time, if you just have like this canned email that you could send out, makes your life easier. So
easier.
emails to people. I think the follow-up emails are the best because like you don't know what to say. You're emotional. You're ticked off. You want to like yell at them. Like
Right.
why aren't you getting back to me? So this way, instead of do that, you just I have it ready. All I'm going to do is click the button. It's ready. And I'm going to just and then maybe you make it like in your time blocks. Maybe once a week. Or twice a week. I'm going to
This is when I send my follow-up emails. Yeah.
Until they finally say, yes, we want you, or leave me the hell alone, get away. We're not going to hire you, Jack. Stop bothering me. But at least you'll know what it is.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, like indifference is the hardest part for job seekers. I don't know what's happening. Well, the only way you're going to know is to keep asking.
Yes. And I think it's well within the rights. And I bet you agree with it. Like, if you're putting your time and effort into an interview and they're making you do projects, they're making you jump through hoops, they're grilling you day after day, going on for months, then all of a sudden you don't hear anything at all, then you get ghosted. I think it's only fair that you could be a nudge.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's fun. I mean, I wouldn't be a jerk about it, about it. I would call it politely being persistent, politely persistent. So
Yeah,
this way, you don't want to come up, because then they'll blame it on you. They'll gaslight. Oh, we're not hiring you because you're a pushy jerk, Jack. But if you're polite and you just ask nicely, I think that's fair, especially
absolutely.
if
I
they
do
don't
too.
get back, if they don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I,
is there anything we're missing that maybe we could add to that list for the
um,
do-it-yourselfers who are
you
trying to
know,
figure out AI?
if they could use ChatGPT to help with their LinkedIn profile and or their resume, but not to write the whole thing, just portions of it. Help me write a LinkedIn headline using these keywords, specifying this job title, blah, 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 220 characters or less, right? Or help me write a summary too, or help me answer the question, tell me about yourself using my background,
See,
right?
that's so cool. See, that helps out so much because that's so time consuming to do. So like if you
It
have
is.
that, at your ready, it helps out so much. All right, don't laugh. Like this is like, I don't understand when someone says do an AI resume. Like, how do you do an AI resume? Is because a resume is in such a specific format.
No.
Like how, like, is
I
it just they give you the stuff and you have to, then you separately do it in like a resume format or?
You have to do each part of it.
Oh,
So you have to say what would be good accomplishment-based bullets to describe work done as a nanotechnologist, and it would come
okay.
up with some. And then you would have to go through and edit those based on your own personal experience. And so it's a lot of work. You could ask it to, again, make things better. Here's using this bullet, please make this more compelling
Mhm.
or whatever. So rewrite this for me. It can
Right.
rewrite a bullet. So it can make things better, but to say, write me a resume, it won't do that.
I know, I'm such an idiot because when I hear people say you could do an AI resume, I'm literally in my peanut brain thinking you're going to put in, ChatGPT or wherever, and it's going to show up the resume format, how it is. I'm like, how is that possible? Okay. So I got my answer now. And I bet you there are other people who feel the same way, but they're
I
too
bet
embarrassed to
there
say it.
are.
I'm not, I have no ego. I don't care. If I don't know something, I have no qualms admitting I don't get it. So, okay. So it's not, is that like presto, you got your resume. It's more of they're in little bite-sized things. What you're saying is, each piece of it, put it in there. They'll give you better, ideas. Then you give a prompt and so on. So then you're building it. And then separately, you have to put in the right resume format. Okay.
Right, yeah,
Like
right.
I mean, I did it. Like I didn't know exactly what, I thought it'd come out like you put in the oven, it comes out, it's done. Like, how is that possible? It doesn't make sense.
You know what? It probably could do that, but it would be so bad that I wouldn't
Yeah.
even want to suggest.
All right, cool. So I'm glad. So if nothing else, I learned, because I bet you if I didn't know that, I bet you there are a lot of people out there who
Oh,
watch it and
I
will
bet.
watch, who also thought the same thing as me, but no one wanted to bring it up because no one wanted to be that person to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. How does this work? So I think that's going to be helpful for a lot of folks who
Yeah.
now understand it.
Well, and
So
thank goodness for YouTube, right? If you Google it or YouTube it, you can find
yeah.
explanations.
So you gave a lot of information. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd want to, or anything you'd like to share with the audience that we didn't go over?
Um, Wow, I should always have something on the ready. I will say that I want people to be good to themselves if they are unemployed and going through job search. I think it's a really challenging time, and take care of yourself, body, mind, and spirit. Period. End. This is
I
not
love that.
easy.
100. I could agree with you more. I think that's something that people, it's almost like I think people feel guilty if they're not
Mhm.
working to do that. Like they feel guilty. Oh, I got to just be on that job board. I can't go to the gym. Oh, I got to do,
Right.
this because yeah, I agree with you. It's so helpful to have that mental health, emotional well-being. Because let's be honest, we have a mental health crisis in this country.
We
People
do.
are nuts. People are losing their minds. So like you have to, so if you're in between jobs and if you're worried about the finances, could push you over the edge. So 100% yoga, walking, jogging, working out, exercising, eating right. Don't
Mhm.
drink, don't do drugs. I know I sound like a fuddy-duddy, but sorry,
But
guy.
nothing in
I'm better.
excess. That's my
Sorry.
thing.
Yeah.
Nothing in excess.
Okay.
Because
That's a better way of saying it. Yes.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think a little drink, a little
Yeah.
whatever is
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
all
Okay. To be
okay.
fair, yes.
Everything in
Yes.
moderation.
You're like,
Right.
Jack, all right, cut it out here. Don't, have some fun, some life. Okay. I get you. But so
And
that's good.
definitely
I
keep
like
your
it.
friends, right? Because I think
Yeah.
we know one of the reasons for the mental health crisis is that people feel isolated and alone. And that's one of the problems
Yes.
that happens with job seekers. They feel isolated and alone, but
Yeah.
you shouldn't be embarrassed. You need to continue to stay in touch with your work friends and your other friends. Keep those lines of connections open and tight, because that's what you need to get through this.
I love it. I think that you give a lot of awesome advice, but I think this is just something that's just so important for people, whether you're a job seeker or whoever you're going through a tough time. You might even be happy in what you're doing at work, but still you need to do this. Otherwise it's too easy to fall apart. So that's so valuable. I'm so glad you brought it up. So Hannah, thank you so much. This is great. I think for the people who just were AI curious, or AI don't know what the heck to do and how do I start, or they're like, I'm just swamped and I don't know how to do this stuff. So I think you gave a lot of, smart insights, actionable advice for people to make their lives easier. So I really appreciate you taking the time today, because I know you're super busy.
Thank you for asking great questions.
Oh, it's not the great questions. You get great answers. I'm just like, giving dopey questions, but like you're just knocking it out of the park, Hannah. That's it. But I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, this is awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.